Anyway, our opening prayer, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. You have sanctified us through your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves in things of Torah.
Amen.
Amen. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to David. And then after David is finished, we will pick up from there. David.
Okay, my volume's a little bit low today, but it is what it is. Anyway, the other day, as Wendy and I were coming back from one of her appointments, I noticed the awesome beauty of Mount Fagan to the south of us. And it reminded me of the famous character in Oliver Twist. Name isn't spelled the same thing, but that's why today I'm going to quote from Oliver Twist. Fagan begins by saying, "Good, there's no moon." And then one beautiful night, when they had taken a longer walk than is customary with them, for the day had been unusually warm, and there was a brilliant moon, a light wind had sprung up, which was unusually refreshing. I would paint her the life and the joy of the fireside circle and the lively summer group. I would follow her through the sultry fields at noon and hear the low tones of her sweet voice in the moonlit evening walk. I would watch her in all her goodness and charity abroad, and the smiling, untiring discharge of her domestic duties at home. I would paint her the life and joy of the fireside circle and the lively summer group. I would follow her through the sultry fields at noon and hear the low tones of her sweet voice, in the moonlit evening walk. And I would watch her in all her goodness and charity abroad, and the smiling, untiring discharge of domestic duties. And finally, it was a cold, dark night. As Oliver Twist himself says, the stars seemed to the boy's eyes farther from the earth than he had ever seen them before. I asked Marty at the end of last week if he would let me begin today's Torah study slightly differently because we're doing something so extraordinarily important. What I would like to do is to begin by reading the entire section of the Ten Commandments from Genesis chapter 1 all the way to Genesis chapter 14. Genesis first chapter 1, 20, verse 14. Then we can go back and discuss them one by one. But I think it's important as we begin this just to go through the entire collection, the entire set. When I was growing up in Denver at the Jewish National Home for Asthmatic Children, a rabbi there, a wonderful scholar named Chaim Davidovich, I asked him if he could teach me all 613 commandments in order, and he did. And the magic 10 turned out to be, in his counting, commandments number 25 to 34. And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, who has brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee a graven image, nor any manner of likeness of anything that is in the heavens above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down unto them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children upon the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showering mercy unto the thousandth generation of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. That's what I have a little trouble with sometimes. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath unto the Lord thy God. And thou shalt not do any manner of work, thou, not thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested on the seventh day. And wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. And now back to our Torah study.
Very good,
Thank you so
David.
much, Marty.
You're welcome. I just want to read some commentaries, and in each one of your respective Tanakh, you have probably some commentaries in general about the Ten Commandments. Okay, I found one in a book. It's called Penonim of the Torah, Faces of the Torah, and this is written by Rabbi Scheinbaum. And I thought that this was a very interesting 2 paragraphs. Let us momentarily reflect upon the first and last commandments. The first consists of a single sentence which states simply that God took us out of Egypt. It is a confirmation of faith. It is a commandment to believe in the existence of God, to be heard in our hearts and souls. The last of the commandments is again a simple statement. Do not covet. Neither imperative can be translated into practice. Its focus is the heart and mind, the impulses and the desires. These 2 commandments deal with an inner state of mind. If one believes in God, the first commandment, then the rest follows naturally. The last commandment represents faith in oneself, mastery over desires, control over impulses, and discipline of the mind. If this step is attained, the other mitzvot will follow automatically. These 2 commandments comprise the framework of the entire Decalogue. The condition of one's faith shapes his mind and character. It is the determining factor in successful fulfillment of the Torah. Although they may seem superficially impressive, pious talk and meritorious deeds do not always disclose the truth. A smile does not necessarily indicate friendship, nor does a good deed always reflect devotion. The motive, the sincerity of mind and heart, mirrors truth. Holy instincts and pure character combined with righteous conduct are the hallmarks of a Torah Jew. I thought that was an interesting discussion about the Ten Commandments. What we're dealing with is not, in my mind, what is called ethics. It is morality, our moral obligations to not only to ourselves, but to other people and to God. And I think that that framework leads us to understand the different mitzvot as we read through them, because this is a significant change, codifying everything we have read up till now in the book of Genesis and up till now in the book of Exodus. So I think it's a very important compilation of ideas. It is a very simple and easy to understand collection of ideas about proper human behavior. And as we will read, this is not just meant for Jews, it is meant for everyone. The remaining mitzvot will be for the Jewish people as a nation of priests. Remember, we ended last week with that concept. And the priest is a servant. He is a servant of God, but he serves the messages to the people. Yes, David.
One of the things that I've always loved about the order of the Ten Commandments is the fact how they are divided. That the first half really list the very important laws that affect each of our relationships with God.
Mm-hmm.
And the second half deals with relationships with our fellow person. And that fellow person is not necessarily Jewish. Thou shalt not kill refers to anybody. Thou shalt not steal refers to anything. And I just like how they're divided so nicely that way.
Mm-hmm. It's an excellent point. And there's a lot written in other books about this very that you point out. And it's a very important commentary that you bring to the fore, because this is the essence of moral behavior. Right now in philosophy, we are looking into various philosophies and religions to see what are basic principles that show up. There are differences, but there are many similarities. And so it is a very unique, this is a very unique series of codes to begin with. And then later on, there's a whole other things that will be expanded upon. But I think that what David is pointing out is very, very important. Okay, it does not put any one or any group ahead of all of the others. Each group has its responsibilities to the others, but everyone is part of the whole. Yes, Rabbi Mary. Rabbi Mary, I think we can hear you.
You
Okay.
can? Okay.
Yes.
So Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
I'm not
Shalom.
at home. So I'm reading from the great technology. From my phone, I have the Hebrew Tanakh. So I can follow on the translations. What I'm suggesting to the entire group here is see, as David started, how we can create different groups of the mitzvot. So David started by the beginning is to God, and then the others that might be more universal. But there are other ways that we can divide the mitzvot. So let's look at that too, if there are other ways.
Okay. Would you like to begin that discussion a little bit?
No, I am offering a couple of minutes, a minute or a second for you as a group to look at that and see if you see something. If not, I'm familiar with the Ten Commandments. Even it's one of the places that I remember in what perek, in what chapter.
So I'm not sure if all of us understand what you want us to
Okay,
think
so
about.
yeah, so let me show you. See, some of the mitzvot we call mitzvat aseh, mitzvat to do.
Mhm.
And some of the mitzvot are mitzvot of lo ta'aseh, you should not do.
Right.
So that's a very interesting way of looking at things, because some they ask you to do and some they ask you should not. So that's one way of looking at the mitzvot. The other way is to see if they, and as you say, Marty, they hold universally, and let's see if they hold for today for us. You should not murder. And then, and people say, well, all of us during the walking in the desert, we killed and killed. And it's, you shall not murder, not the word kill.
Right.
So it's a big difference in the two, and I believe it's a difference when you go to courts today. So let's see which mitzvot we have to do.
Okay. So, okay. So we should think of. So why are many of them in the negative?
That's right.
Okay, that's I think is another way of looking at this. And Helene, when we approach children, okay, and we say, this is what you should do, versus this is what you shouldn't do. Okay. Tell us about children and how they respond to the manner in which things are stated.
Well, when we were young, we were not given the gift of someone actually listening to us. Today, thank you, God, today we know that children have understandings of death. They understand. Think of Humpty Dumpty fell on the wall. Even their songs. There's things about loss and death. There are laws. There are laws, and as everyone is talking, I was thinking about what we were talking about are laws from God, not choices, but He gives us free will, doesn't He? And
Yes.
we have free will, but His laws are not part of free will. His law says, do it or don't do it. It's fascinating because when you're a child and you're free, you just do it because it's fun and because it's you inside. God is inside every child. So the whole notion of children being told, you do it this way, is wrong, as far as I'm concerned. I believe we need to listen and ask the right question.
So by asking it I'll get to you, Michael, very shortly. I just want to, so are you trying to say that if you do it this way, that the child has to spend more time thinking about the commandment that you've said?
The child doesn't think, the child feels.
Very, very good. Very good. So it's more than that. And that's one of the things about the commandments when they're in a negative, when they're presented in a, don't, instead of saying you shouldn't do this, by presenting it in a negative sort of way, you have to ponder it. We ponder it as adults, but we also feel it. And in essence, I think what you're saying, the 10 Commandments are from within. They're from within. It's not out there. It's inside of us. It's in our hearts and souls.
It's always been from our birth. We were born with love.
Okay. I saw a video about, we'll come back to that. I know I'm talking too much. Michael, you go ahead.
Yeah, as it comes to teaching children generally, I've had the opportunity to be with a Chabad rabbi in California for many, many years. And he has a very big family, and his teaching was mostly by way of example.
Right.
The child was always with the rabbi, constantly. And he taught, that was his main way of teaching, by example. When the child was old enough to understand, to start to walk, start to talk, it was always all the children, and he had many of them, God bless him. And so it was by, the way I saw it was by example.
And that is the big message in Torah. Okay, we discussed that, and we will be discussing that again and again. Thank you, Michael. That's very good. Any other ideas from anyone? Yes, Don.
I've always been interested in how Hillel, the elder, summarized the Ten Commandments. His compression: "Do not, what is hateful to you, do not do to any man," and that was actually absorbed into, I think, the book of Matthew and the New Testament. So it's kind of a compression of the Ten Commandments. And what interests me is that it permits a self-reflection, where the Ten Commandments don't really do that. They just say, here's what it's going to be. It doesn't shine the light on the individual at all, whereas Hillel pull that out.
That's a good point. I think, wasn't it, correct me, Rabbi Mary, was it Rabbi Hillel who spoke about, in similar words, standing on one foot? That's right. And he said something very similar.
Yeah, he said, this guy comes to Rabbi Shammai. Shammai was wasn't lenient as Rabbi Hillel. Shammai was very strict. And so this guy comes to Shammai and says, you know what, teach me the entire Torah while I'm standing on one foot. Shammai gets very angry, slaps his face and says, "Get out of here." So he goes to Rabbi Hillel, and Rabbi Hillel says, "And you shall love your neighbor as you love yourself." The rest is all commentary. Go and study. So that approach is, first of all, as Helene said, there are answers, not just saying don't do it or get away, and an explanation. This is the core. Now everything else is commentary, but you need to learn about it.
Right.
Now what I would, Helene, you know psychology, Marty, too, that when we tell a kid no is less effective than when we say yes. But when we tell someone don't, like, for example, Marty asked me, what road shall I take to Tucson? And I would say, don't take 19. So what would be now, Marty, your question? Don't
Why?
I
Why?
first, why? And what other question, comment can I say? Don't take this.
Which one should I take?
Take that.
That's right.
Which one shall I take?
Very
So
good.
you are asking for an alternative. So we need to remember that positive is more effective, and we know that. And we teach people, don't say no, just explain, blah, blah, blah. But we give an alternative. And so that's with the positive, and that's with the negative, the difference. And now I'm not challenge you. Please look again at the 10 Commandments and see which ones are aseh, do, and which one are lo ta'aseh. Let's look at them.
Okay. I don't, yeah, wait, yes, okay, Ricky, then Michael.
A parallel thing to what Mary started out with of you can summon, standing on one foot, and go out and study, or all the rest is, whatever. My favorite verse, and there is a parallel here I'll get to, is Micah 6:8. What does the Lord require of you? Only do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And to me, I only need the last sentence, walk humbly with my God, because that will encompass absolutely everything that
Good point.
the whole Torah is about, is to walk humbly with my God.
Very, very good. Well stated. Yes, Michael.
Love your, as Rabbi Miri was talking a moment ago about loving thy neighbor as yourself. I say love your neighbor as you love God. The reason I say that is because if you believe that you're created in the image of God, then that has a certain very high respect. Now, I don't say worship your neighbor, I say love your neighbor. So there should be no confusing about that. But when you do that, when you have that attitude of loving your neighbor as you would God, I think you're really showing respect for your fellow human being. And I'm just trying to connect the dots by saying that.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Don.
I think just one more, if I may. It strikes me that the 10 Commandments' purpose is to improve the life of the individual, improve the life of the community, the individual in the community. And the discouraging thing is that we are not genetically predisposed to doing that. We need those commandments. We need the enforcement. We need the oversight of God. We need the oversight governing authorities, the police, the government, because we just simply are unable by ourselves to do those simple things. It's staggering to me that, maybe someday somebody operating a CRISPR machine will figure out how to plug the 10 Commandments into our genes. But until then, it's just a continual battle for the 10 Commandments to take effect in our lives, or overcome our greed and selfishness, which seems to be the natural state. I'll shut up now. Thanks.
No, actually, that is one of the debates. You ended with one of the debates in philosophy. Is man created evil, or is man, and when I mean mankind, created good?
Yeah.
And because some people like to take the point, well, the baby is one of the selfishest beings, and develops a whole philosophy on that, while others say no, the bad is taught to the infant. So it's interesting. Yes, is that Wendy's hand? David, I think you're on mute.
Back to love thy neighbor as they love themselves, Lord. Just because, not because that one, the way Michael put it, assumes that everybody believes in God and everybody loves God. At one point, you may be angry at God because your whole family is dead now except you for whatever catastrophic reason. And some people have more love for themselves for others. And look at the very selfish people who love themselves more than life. Wouldn't it be nice if they would then treat everybody that well? So, and I think in that case, it's like, it just puts the onus then on the person reading the commandment.
Right. Excellent point. Another way of stating things would be to put yourself in the other person's shoes.
Yep.
Yep, that's right. I wanted to, yes, Rabbi Mary.
Well, I'm going back to Michael. You said not to worship the other person, but just to love them. Now, what about God? And it doesn't matter how you believe in God and what is God about you. And I'm coming back to the 10 Commandments. In the 10 Commandments, and I'll ask that again, why wish it says, Anochi Adonai, let me say in your language, the first one. You shall, you shall have no gods beside me. I'm the God, I'm your God who brought you out of Egypt, the house of bondage. So here we see a reason to worship God. What is it? Why not to worship idols according to this?
Anyone?
What did I do for you that you should worship me?
That's right.
Well, in the first sentence, he says, God says that I brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. I set you free. That's a good reason to be acknowledging me.
That's right. I mean,
that's good enough. Yes.
Yeah, and it gives a reason. Now, most of the commandments here don't give you a reason. They don't say, don't steal, don't murder because, or because. But there is a couple that do. Notice, first of all, worship God. But there is another one, and it's a quite interesting one. And Gail might, or Michael might remember when we spoke about that one. I'm just challenging you to find what responses we got from the friends of the temple at that time. So look for one mitzvah that tells you why you should do it, or what will you'll win by doing it.
Well, you're supposed to honor your parents.
That's right.
That's the
Why,
first one.
Gail? Why? What do you get out of that?
Long life, I guess, is what it's.
That's
what it
what
says.
it says. That's what it says, and that's a very interesting one. You shall. What's the word you use, Gail? That's Friedman.
Honor.
You should honor. Okay. Kaved. Yeah. So that you live longer. So that's, in my mind, it's quite an interesting thing. And if you remember, I don't remember her name, it will come to me. Ted's wife. Anyway, she would say, "Why should I honor my parents? They were sons of bitches. They were this and they were there. Wow, shall I love them and honor them and respect them?" It was a good question. What shall I do if I still hate my parents and they did so much bad to my life? And so that's a question. They ask you to do it. It's a mitzvah. It's a commandment to respect your parents. It doesn't say to love them. It says to respect them. And then you live longer. I think it's quite a strange statement there.
Yes, Gail, go ahead. You wanted to answer Mary, and then I'll
I wonder if
the time.
a long life or maybe a better life, if you, not necessarily you're going to live to be 100, but that you're going to have a better life if you respect your parents. That would be how I would verse, but I don't know what the Hebrew is. So.
All right.
That's an option.
Okay, Don.
That commandment bothered me for a long time because I would have expected that the reward would have been so that you can be honored by your children. But it isn't. It's that you shall live a long time, which I'm sure doesn't always pan out. I mean, you honor your parents, and the next thing a boulder falls on your head. Just purely accidental. But I learned more about that commandment because in my childhood, my father was totally absent from my life. And then in his old age, he needed help. He was ill, he was old, there was nobody. And so I thought a long time because it was a huge commitment. And I decided I was going to do it. So I was his caregiver his last 7 years. And what I learned in those 7 years, I wouldn't trade for any education. And it's only then that commandments started to become clear. But I still don't understand why living long.
Well, maybe it's not duration. Maybe it's not duration in the strict sense of the word. Okay, it may mean, as Spock would say, live long and prosper. Be at peace with yourself, because a lot of the other commandments allow you to be at peace with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Would Ricky and Gail want to defer to Helene because she leaves soon, and it's
okay.
Okay. Yes, Helene.
It's so psychological. I hate to put
Yes.
it, but the truth is that we're not talking about the feelings of guilt and shame and fear We're not, feelings are feelings. When you're a child, you feel everything and you get angry. And who protects you? Who honors these feelings and says, it's okay, come to me, I will protect you. God is our Father. A father protects his children, and we need protection from the negative parts of ourselves as well.
Good point. Good point. Yes, Ricky.
I'm going to take 2 points. One, similar to what Donald just was saying, I had no or a rocky relationship with my mother most of my growing up through, I don't know, age 50. But near the end, I did make sure that everything that she needed, was taken care of. Not that I was her caregiver, but anyway, ended up getting out of it, and I remember very clearly doing, I'm proud of me for being able to give to somebody what they did not give to me when I wanted it. So the being proud of me was the outcome of my being able, my taking care of my mom at the end. But I want to get back, my translation of this particular commandment is honor your father and your mother, that you may long endure on the land that the Lord your God is assigning to you, which is very different than.
That's right.
That's
Thank
right.
you, Ricky.
Very different.
Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you, Ricky. We need to finish the sentence there.
That's right.
Not to live longer, but to live longer in the promised land.
On the land that the Lord your God is assigning to you.
Right.
So just read the whole sentence. Sometimes you have to read the whole paragraph, but
Good point. Excellent point.
Yeah. Okay.
Gail, you had your hand up too.
Well, I was just going to say that's what Friedman's commentary was too. It's
right.
on. Yeah. So that's a different thing.
Now, I want to raise another question, and that is the first word, v'daber. Am I saying that right?
The first
very first word, God spoke.
וידבר אלוהים את
Yes.
כל הדברים האלה. Yeah.
Is that a different than a what we would say commanded?
This is what he spoke. It says, and
Right.
he spoke these things. That's why when we call it 10 commandments on 10 whatever, it's not exactly. I think that we attributed this to the 10 commandments because they come 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it says, and God spoke these words. And in Hebrew, we call the 10 commandments Aseret Adibrot, which means the 10 utterances.
Yeah.
Right, right. So it sort of reminds me of going to school and the teacher telling us, these are the things I want you to remember, and starts itemizing all the things on the blackboard. When I grew up, it was a blackboard, then it became a green board.
Now it's white.
Now it's white. Go figure. But the point was that a good teacher said, it wouldn't say, I want you to do these things, or I want you to remember. The teacher just spoke the words that were on the blackboard, and you had to learn it. You had to learn it, but it was as if the teacher was offering us something to learn, rather than a commandment. Yes, Gail.
2 things. Friedman comments that God actually introduces himself to the people, and
Yes.
he's speaking directly to the people. He's not speaking through Moses.
Correct.
Okay, so that's a little different too, because they've never had any direct conversation or whatever. The other thing, and this is a little aside and it's kind of a joke, but I've been thinking about it. Remember we were talking about the horn last week and who was blowing it? And you
Yes.
said, write a midrash, so I did. And what I came up was Michael Finkelstein's thousandth great grandfather is the one who is blowing the horn.
Very interesting. Okay, really good. I like that.
Now I'm
Right.
asking, just 1 second, Donald, so that I hope you won't forget. What it says is honor your parents so you live longer on the land that I'm giving you. So what's the big deal? I mean, you know, I'll honor my parents so I can get into this land. Is that a good reason to live longer? So,
Okay.
Donald, I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, let Don answer that and then Ricky.
Well, I wasn't going to answer anything. I just, first of all, I'm really glad we're dwelling on this because it's something I think about fairly often. But coming back to the reason that the commandment should be obeyed is God says, I brought you out of Egypt. And which is something that I think I've mentioned before, I think about a lot in this discussion. And what happened in Egypt was these terrible, terrible plagues that killed millions of people, and which I believe happened. I mean, I actually believe that those were real events, historical events. And that what the Hebrews did was to, by coupling them to God's will, they've actually weaponized natural forces. So the Hebrews have weaponized natural forces and inflicted those forces on the Egyptians and later on Canaanites, in fact. So, and that's the reason that the people should obey the commandments. And that's like it's a mismatch to me because I don't really understand why coupling those disasters to the reason that people should obey the commandments is really a good reason. I mean, the benefits of obeying the commandments can be expressed in the rewards to the individual, the rewards to the community, but the threat of colossal punishment just bothers me. So anyway, I can't really take that any further except to say that it's just something I
Okay.
about for many years.
Hi,
So-
Rabbi.
So is I just want to clarify.
Wait a minute. Wait. Okay.
Oh,
You were
I
answering
don't know.
Don? You were answering Don? Rabbi
Yes,
Mary,
yeah.
because Ricky has had her hand
Don,
up.
please
Go ahead.
clarify your wondering or your dilemma of that you were saying. Is that on one hand, he killed all these people, and on the other hand, he wants us to obey?
No, it
I'm
just,
sorry.
no, that's not, that wasn't my point was that these disasters killed many millions of people. And that's how the Hebrews escaped Egypt. They left in the turmoil. You know, everybody was busy trying to save themselves, and so the Hebrews escaped to the Reed Sea. But my question was, now we're at the foot of Mount Sinai. Here are the commandments. Why connect those? The purpose of commandments is to improve the future life of the Hebrews and the Hebrew community. Why is it necessary to refer back to this slaughter in Egypt as the reason to obey those commandments?
Now, think about what happened before before the commandments and the desert and all that. But why is the reason that he took us out of Egypt? Then that's why we need to. It doesn't say obey.
Right.
And we spoke, was Marty was pointing out, Marty. What were you saying?
Well, no, he spoke these words. He didn't command these words.
But the words themselves are imperative, you know, thou shalt not.
Yes, but
So-
there's a different way in the manner of speech.
Yeah, so, you know, to obey, you use your index finger.
It's not just words that are being spoken. It's a concept of dealing with it within yourself.
No matter. Why does the reason have to be because I brought you out of Egypt? To make why the reason is because here are the best words to live by, regardless of what happened in the past. Here you are out in the middle of the desert for almost an entire generation, and you will be more than a generation by the time they get out. Why is it necessary? It's a starting point, a new starting point. Why is it necessary to refer back as the justification because I brought you out of Egypt and killed all those Egyptians? I don't get it.
Because you owe me. Because
Well, that makes it worse for me. That makes it even worse.
I did you a favor, so now you owe me these 10 commandments
That
back.
makes it worse.
I'm just throwing that.
No, that's what Don is implying, but
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
not. I would disagree. I would disagree. I'm going to let Suzanne say a few words.
Okay. Well, Don, the way I look at this, those plagues that were in Egypt were a smackdown against all the pagan gods. And for Yahweh to underscore that he is the creator, and that he's the top banana, and these other entities are not. And to bring the Israelites out of Egypt, they were in bondage. To me, like also a metaphor for sin. And we know that the wages of sin is death. So God was rescuing them from the sinful ways that had befallen them, to get them away from all that evilness and sinfulness that Egypt had become. And now I know, I do understand your concern. I mean, that may be okay for the frogs and the locusts and all, but you know, we're still left with the deaths of the firstborn. But we have to remember that it was the Egyptians, and I believe that these little G gods are real. I do believe they're real. And so their response was to murder the firstborn son, or well, I don't know if they said firstborn, but certainly there came a period where the Hebrew sons were to be murdered, you know, thrown in the river. Of course, Moses got saved because his parents had the foresight to put him in this basket, and he got rescued. So I don't see God as saying, well, he did rescue them. He's always there to rescue us if we're ready to receive what he has to offer. And I think it's a good thing. And I think it demonstrates that God is a merciful and loving God.
Okay, I would simplify that in another way by saying I saved you, or I redeemed you from your slavery and all the hardships you were enduring in Egypt. And the means is not that important. We can discuss the means, and I know we've had that discussion before, but I think that this is like a preamble to, this is why I've brought you here. Yeah, okay. Ricky, you had your hand up. Rabbi Norman has something to say about this.
Well, okay. Well, anyway, my commentary here God applies this condition on a national scale. The right of future generations of Israelites to inherit the land of Israel from their parents is contingent upon honoring them. So that's the commentary in my Bible. But again, I want to go back to the second part of that I pointed out earlier, that you may long endure on the land that the Lord your God is assigning to you. When I read that, it's like, somebody is very ill and you say it's all going to be okay. Now, when you say it's going to be okay, doesn't mean they're going to get well. They may die, but that's okay. And maybe the land that the Lord is assigning to you is heaven, or, it's not necessarily on this earth. So that's, that you may
Okay.
endure in the presence of the Lord, if you want to phrase it that way.
Okay.
That's
Rabbi.
Yeah.
Well, good morning, good Shabbos, and I apologize for being late. So I'm not sure exactly where you are in the text.
It's a general discussion. We haven't
right.
even begun discussing
but
each one
hearing
individually.
Don's question, which I've heard from him before, and I know how much he struggles with that. We all do. Let me suggest, based on two of my teachers, Professor Tzvi Yehuda, who I studied with in Cleveland, said, look at the 10 Commandments. And again, that's a problematic word. That they're not called the 10 Commandments in Hebrew, but the 10 sayings, or Tzvi Yehuda called them the 10 ideals. Okay, that God says to the Israelites, in the ideal society that I am hoping to establish with you, these would be the ideals of where such and such does not happen, where such and such does happen, and whatever. And he also then looks at the first, or the beginning, call it the first commandment, the first saying, if you will, or the introductory statement, that God is presenting himself to the entire people. Yes, right. Moses received the Torah, but it says that all the people heard, all the people witnessed. And so God is, in a sense, introducing himself, God's self, here's how you know me, not necessarily in this phrase, but later on in the Torah also it says, I'm the one who created the world. I'm the one who redeemed you from Egypt. I'm the one who brought you through the sea, etc. This is what I do. Now, knowing that and understanding that, and then shifting into the teaching of another of my professors, Jacob Pedachovsky in Cincinnati, who said that this is what defines the covenant at Sinai. He called it Ever Since Sinai. Is his book, is not so much what happened at Sinai at that moment, but what has happened ever since as a covenanted people. And by definition, we are human, we are mortal, and we will make mistakes. Okay, and perhaps some of the mistakes would include some of the, whether it's slaughtering or whether it's an expansion of a notion of self-defense that the Israelites proactively decided, and they at least the narrators and the writers ascribed it to God, that you're going to have to wipe out all these other peoples lest they interfere with our setting up of this ideal society so to speak. So that's kind of my 2 cents or 4 cents from the two different teachers in how to look at these ideals or these guidelines. We call them mitzvot, but Jewish tradition doesn't necessarily understand that only as commandment. This is God's word, and most of Jewish tradition doesn't see them as being immutable. Most of Jewish tradition sees them certainly as being open to interpretation, open to clarification. Ricky just gave us a very
Yes.
nice understanding of that you may long endure on the land. Is that singular or plural? Is that what does that mean? And how do we honor our parents? And do we honor their memory? And as long as we're honoring their memory, then they're the ones who are still alive wherever we are living, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the interpretations are there.
Yes. Okay, I'd like to end the discussion and try to bring up some newer ideas on that. So first Rabbi Mary and then Don, but I want to concentrate on some newer ideas.
Okay, I'm going to go back to what Ricky read correctly, the entire sentence, to the land that I gave you, which we don't know how good that land is. It might be desert. But what other word that we use for Canaan, for the land that he is giving us, is the promised land.
Right.
And metaphorically, if we think about promised land, we still use it. I'm in an airplane that's moving, whatever, and when we land, oh God, it's not a good example, but to the promised land, to something that we wanted to get to, and we use the word promise. And to Donald, and I'm going to say again quickly, it's not only that it took us out of Egypt from being slaves, we were given freedom. And that's a word that we really, really need to hold. It's not what it did before, but by ending slavery, we are free.
Good points. Okay. I don't know. I guess Don and David, I think you've been trying to raise your hand too for quite a while. Is this a newer topic?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And Don, is yours a newer topic?
I just wanted to respond to Rabbi Norm real quick.
Okay, make it real quick because we've spent an awful lot of time on this right now. Yes, go ahead.
I'm glad we did. But Rabbi Norm, you joined us before I made the comment that the Ten Commandments seem to me are there because we are unable genetically to behave as the commandments give us the ideals for. So we just don't have the genes to do it. And also I was reminded of God introducing him. I always think of the Rolling Stone song, Symphony for the Devil, where Mick Jagger sings, "Please let me introduce myself."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, but this is very true.
Sure.
That's right. Good point. David?
Well, thank you. This is a new idea, I think. And I'd like to try to find an attempt to bring the essence of what these 10 commandments are, these 10 ideals, to the modern age. I know that a lot of us think that the US Supreme Court has made some very poor decisions in the last few days. However, in my mind, one of the decisions that I I don't agree with, but I don't think was all that poor a decision, was when they said that this coach, if he really wants to go out to center field and pray, it's okay, he can do that. And it also harks back to the fact that so many courthouses in the United States have the Ten Commandments inscribed on their walls. And my point has to do with something like that. The Ten Commandments, in my mind, go beyond Judeo-Christian philosophy. They are intended for Jews, Christians, atheists, everybody. And I think the key is that they have to be for everyone, or they are meaningless. These are basic laws, whether you are religious or not. These are very basic ideas. And I think in the modern age, I think that's an important thing to try to recall. Thank you, Marty.
Very well stated. What I wanted to do before we have any other discussion, Ruth Bryn, I've read her book of poetry, some poems before, but I wanted to read something about her interpretation of the Ten Commandments in general. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is just read her poetry here, and we have mentioned a lot of the concepts that she writes in her poem, and the words which were spoken to the people from the fiery mountain were 10. In Egypt, the priests were powerful and rich because they knew the secrets of the book of the dead. In Greece, the oracles revealed the fates determined by capricious gods for princes or warriors. In Babylon, the priests taught each other mysteries too deep for ordinary folks to fathom. But in Israel, there is no secret and privileged priesthood. We are a holy people. In Israel, the heart of the mystery is the Ten Commandments. So easy to understand, a child can recite them as he counts on his fingers. In Israel, we pray for God's help when we make the difficult effort to perform his commandments. You shall not wrong a stranger or oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. We were strangers in Egypt and Kiev. We were foreigners in Babylon and Berlin. We were outsiders and wanderers in Spain and Poland and France. We looked at the citizens of those lands with the dark, pleading eyes of the alien. Our hearts beat the hesitant beat. For those without rights, fearful and uncertain, we pray you help us to remember the heart of the stranger when we walk in freedom. Help us to be fair and upright in all our dealings with other people. Oh, burn and brand the lesson of all the years and all the lands on our hearts. Lord, make us forever strangers to discrimination and injustice. I think that sums up our past hour of discussion. And Ruth Bryn, I think, is one of the best poets that we have encountered in Judaism. Anyway, any other discussion on the Ten Commandments in general? So now let's go. Yes, Rabbi Mary, you're muted. Rabbi Mary, you're muted.
We don't have to dwell on what I'm going to say, and we'll go back to Marty's general question. I really encourage to read the beginning. You should not make a sculpture, etc., etc. And just like Ricky pointed out, to continue the sentence, please do that, and you'll see the difference between you should not make a sculpture and what it really, really is told us to do or not to do.
Good point. And we're going to, it's rather interesting as what's going to happen after we finish our session on going through the Ten Commandments. Yes, Rabbi Norman.
Yeah, I just want to ask again, with apologies for coming in late. I'm assuming it was pointed out in the general discussion of the 10 statements, 10 sayings, that there's no reward specifically associated with it.
Right.
Okay. I expect you to do these things. I want you to do these things, but there's nothing articulated of, and if you do, this is what will happen.
There is one. Kaved,
yeah. Right. Yeah, right.
But it could also be a metaphor
for mother and father, and some have tried to say, well, that's supposed to encompass all of them, but
we'll see.
You know,
we'll see as we get
be after number 4 rather than after anything else. So okay.
Now there's another subject, and that is there will be differences in the order of the 10 Commandments, how they're broken up. When we see in Christianity, some of the wording is different. The numeric order is a little different, and how it's divided up into what's one commandment or 2 commandments and things like that. And so we need to be aware of that difference, but the message is the same when you get through it all. Okay, it's it isn't really that important to say, well, this is number 6 and this is number 5. These should be together, or this, but we don't have to worry about that part. Look at the entire message. Okay, rather than numeric order. Okay, yes, Rabbi Norman.
It seems like we should hit the pause button and run Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner, 2,000-year-old man, and the story of Moses coming down from Mount Sinai. You know, children of Israel, I present you these 10 commandments. Right.
That's how he drops it.
How much are they? They're free. I'll take 10.
Right.
We all know that joke. So
yeah, that's true. So with that, Ricky, would you like to do some reading verses?
Where do you want us to start?
Verses 1.
Okay.
Verse 1.
God spoke all these words, saying, I, the Lord and your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage, you shall have no other gods besides me. Well, that's
okay. Let's stop at that point.
That's admitting there are other gods. So it's henotheistic. It's not monotheistic yet. But you're not allowed to worship those gods. But those people can worship those gods. But I'm the one that you're going to worship. So it's an admission of the existence of other gods.
Very good. Very good. Any other comments about that? Yes, Suzanne.
Okay, just to clarify my position, these other Elohim are sons of God, just like any angel or whatever. And I don't think God ever intended for people to ever worship these other little g gods. And if we look back in, I forget which chapter it is in Genesis, but the Tower of Babel, when God divides up man with the different languages, he also uses the little g gods from the divine council to help administrate the different nations. It's made more clear, I think, in Deuteronomy 32, and I think it's verse 8. Anyways, my point here is that these little g gods are all part of the big G, all part of Yahweh's creation. That's all I want to say.
Okay. When I first read this, I had a similar interpretation that, there's recognition that other gods exist. Well, I reread it and came up with another interpretation. Is it that a separation of man-made gods from God himself? When we worship an idol, it's representative of God. Okay, but this is all a construction from man, not God itself. God isn't making other gods. Maybe it's man who's made other gods. Yes.
That's the way I would enter. I would say,
Yeah.
you should not make other gods that you will worship. Don't, yeah. That's something you're going to make up. It's not that they exist, but don't make a god.
Yeah, but in the past too, all of these other gods, maybe that's another interpretation. I don't know. Rabbi Mary.
I am going to say something that for some people it might sound sacrilegious. Is that what we say?
That's the word, yes.
And it is, in my mind, humans also created what we call God.
Mhm.
So that's an interesting thing. And many times I ask people, say, well, I said, what's nature? And it's very difficult to define nature because it's an abstract noun. But I don't know what, you said man-made. Later on, we hear about making a place of sacrifice and that it need to be made out of stones that were not chiseled by human beings. So that's an interesting thing. But I would like for us to bear, well, if you want, I mean, this is what I'm bearing, is the issue of creation of the notion of God.
Okay. All right. There's another. Any other discussion? Okay. Any comments about you shall have no other gods beside me? Does that create any image in your mind? Yes, Rabbi Mary. You're muted again.
I'm trying to avoid the background noise. In the Torah, Rab Norman and myself keep emphasizing that in the translation, the word you never know if you is plural or you is singular. And Reb Norman insinuated about that issue, but most of the sayings, the utterance that were said there is for each one of us. And that's, I think that it's a very, very important issue.
Okay. Ricky, would you like to read?
Sure. I'm ready.
Okay, 5 and 6.
Oops, yeah. No, 4 and 5. 4, 5, 6. You shall not make for yourself a sculpted image or any likeness of what is in the heaven above, or on the earth below, or in the waters under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am an impassioned God, visiting the guilt of the parents upon the children, upon the third and upon the fourth generations of those who reject me, but showing kindness to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. Again, here's a question. My statement is read the whole paragraph, or read, because most people just read, you will not have a graven image. You'll not sculpt any likeness and stuff. And the whole rest, I'm the Lord, I'm an impassioned God, visiting guilt of the parents upon the children. But that's only for the third or the fourth generation. But if you love me, I'll go to the 1,000th. But it's when you read the whole thing, it's quite different than the short version that most of us tend to spout. I'll use that word.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good point. Why do you think he singles out up to through the fourth generation?
Does he think that the great grandmother would live long enough to see the fourth generation?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
I mean, because grandchildren, that's 3, and great grandchildren is 4. My family, we had 5 generations for a while.
What would happen if you excused that? If you excused, you didn't follow this.
Oh.
And
okay.
he says it will be a guilt of the fathers upon the children, upon the third and upon the fourth generations. Why say that? I wish Helene were here to speak about what happens in families as time goes by when they don't do something. And all of a sudden it gets more and more diluted and forgotten over time. And then it's no longer adhered to.
That's what I was alluding to. If the great grandpa
right.
still alive will still have an effect on that fourth generation.
But do they have to be alive?
No, but I just made them alive.
Because they would have either taught or omitted teaching,
right,
to the sons and daughters. Then that generation would automatically forget the same things going on generation after generation until it eventually disappears. Think of the people who went through the Inquisition, the Marranos.
Mm-hmm.
And some people still carry on the tradition. They don't even know why they're doing it. But my mother did it, my grandmother did it, my great-grandparents did it, and I was told I should do it too.
But why then stop at 4? Because by 4, that tradition may have totally disappeared. So it really.
But what happened to those Marranos? What happened?
Well, many of them found out many generations later that way back there was a Jew, but they never had
Yes.
any idea. So that's why I'm saying, why did that part of this stop at fourth generation who reject me? Because I would think that would go to the 1,000th generation. The
Think of the
rejection.
Spanish Inquisition and what happened to those
Yeah,
people
some of
over
them
time.
totally
That's
they think they're Christian, then it's only with Ancestry and 23andMe that they found they had some Ashkenazi blood in them.
Mhm.
You know,
Or
they had
Sephardic blood.
Or
not
Sephardic,
Ashkenazi.
mostly Sephardic.
Sephardic, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yes, Rabbi.
David had his hand up first, I think.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure
Yes,
about
David.
Suzanne, but okay.
Okay. Go
It's a
ahead.
Wendy hand.
Oh, it's a Wendy hand.
Um,
Okay.
It's a Wendy hand. This goes in a way to one of the biggest complaints I have heard friends of mine say when, as you get grandchildren and everything, because I'm going to call it the generation gap for lack of a better term. But I remember one of the men at the retreat we used to run saying, I feel like a non-person. I go someplace with a family and I sit in the back of the room and nobody talks to me. And I said, I agree, because when David and I would go someplace, he goes, why are we going? We're not going to see anyone. I said, David, because we have to be the faceless grandparents in the back of the room that have to be there and everybody ignores. And so therefore, when they think the older you are and the more problems you have moving, like your brain is fried and you can't retell stories. But it just hit me in modern day now, this is happening badly again with that critical race theory. Oh, sorry, you feel bad about what you did, so we're not going to teach you what you did. You know, and then nobody can recap and then everything will be repeated. Anyway, that was what I was taking from this conversation.
Okay. All right. And Rabbi, yes, please. I don't know who had hand up first, Suzanne or Rabbi.
Well,
I just
Rabbi
don't know.
can go. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. It's probably not a valid explanation or interpretation, but you asked about why the third and why the fourth.
Mhm.
In slang, I don't know if Rabbi Miri ever encountered this, but in slang, and it's based on a commentary that I had seen a number of years ago. That in Hebrew, when you're talking about the shlishi, which would be the third generation, also that's like euphemistic for those who are still connected, because shalshelet is a chain, is a linked chain. Okay, whereas revi'i, the fourth, also is understood euphemistically as being much farther away. So
Yes.
not that was the lingo in the time of the Torah, but
Right.
later on they picked it up, and I remember hearing it as well as a commentary about it. So yes, your own children, and then maybe one more generation of those, they're still linked, but by the fourth generation, they're already farther away.
Mhm.
Reva, they're farther away, and as opposed to lahavdil, as opposed to 1,000 generations, who can even imagine that of those who continue to love me, God says.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point. Yes, Rabbi. Oh, Suzanne first, and then Rabbi Mary.
I was thinking that this, with that stipulation of the third and fourth generation, that that could be a deterrent, so that that the fathers, well, I guess parents, need to think twice if they want to worship some other entity, because then God's I'm not sure exactly if there's what this punishment is, visiting the iniquity of the fathers. I'm not quite sure what that would mean, but I see it as a deterrent so that they don't bring this whatever onto their children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren.
Okay. Does it? I'm not sure.
Just a quick one.
Sure.
And we mentioned this before, that numbers in the Torah you need to take, with a grain of salt. So it might be just a saying, like Rabbi Norman said, that. To make it funny, I think, is that there was not enough space on the tablets, That stops. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, I think it needs to be pointed out that in all of, notwithstanding what Don has been asking us and on a regular basis, but notwithstanding that, Jewish or Israelite jurisprudence never within the Israelite community has this kind of collective punishment. That a punishment would be proclaimed for, and pronounced for the future generations or later generations. The prophets talk against it. Then the Sanhedrin votes against it. So even though this is what God said, that for His sense or God's sense of ultimate punishment, it's never administered through the people of Israel.
So
Okay. I want.
A quick one again is there is a statement. Is this Pirkei Avot or prophets? I don't remember, but Avot achlu boser v'shinei banim tikena.
Mishle, I think. I'm pretty sure Mishle. Yeah. Okay. Proverbs.
Okay. I have a question about a word. I'm not sure that could be punishing the offender or remembering the offender. In Torah, it is a pair, a kuf, and a dalet.
Oh, poked. Poked is holding account. Holding responsible for.
Right. So it could, but it also has been used as remembering.
As visit. Yeah, visit or right. I mean, there are some of the texts on the prayer book is Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah, that the God and the messengers visited
Right.
Sarah. Yeah, but in modern Hebrew, in the army, it's the hipaked is to stand at attention and count off. Okay,
and you'd better remember.
Right.
Okay. I know some people have just said that by saying a third and fourth generation, that it's idiomatic for a long time. Okay. And thousandth generation meaning forever. Okay. And any other comment? Oh, yes. Is that Wendy or David again?
Well, this is David.
Okay.
And I've completely forgotten what I wanted to say. So I'll put up my hand again when I remember. Oh, yeah, this is what I wanted to say. Excuse me. What I wanted to say is that in this beginning of the commandments, there are threats of punishment and visiting iniquity upon the third and fourth generation, and bringing joy to the father's generation. God is threatening punishment. But then in the next commandment, And he says, don't take my name in vain, for I will not hold you guiltless. In this case, God is not threatening punishment. All he says is, if you do this, I won't hold you guiltless. I'll be angry at you,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to punish you. At least I hope that's what he's saying.
Okay, we will, as we discuss it, you'll be able to see if the group agrees with you, if there are other interpretations. So, Ricky, I'm going to let you read verse
Okay.
7.
My version, my Bible, you shall not swear falsely by the name of the God, of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not clear one who swears falsely by his name. Or, more commonly said, you shall not take my name in vain. So, you shall not swear falsely by the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not clear one who swears falsely by his name. Well, there's a case,
Okay.
another case of the end of the sentence. For the Lord will not clear one who swears. So the
He
Lord's
will
going
not
to
excuse or leave
Yeah.
unpunished.
the Lord's going to hold a resentment.
Yeah, but unpunished. Okay, it's more than that, Ricky. He will not excuse what you did or leave what you did unpunished. Okay, with the word
Okay.
clear and infers both of those. So
Okay.
so one of the things I noticed that in different interpretations and like that, to soften the blow, we may say it a little differently or not, but this would, I think, go back to guilt and what God would think about your guilt. Any other comments?
Or want you to think about your guilt.
That's right. You could put it that way too. Any other comments? This is a very important statement. Yes, Rabbi Roman and then Suzanne.
Well, there's two things. I mean, most often in classical Jewish literature, most often this is referred or identified with testimony in a court. Okay, is not,
Yes.
when we say so help me God, whatever, that, and if you then are lying or telling a falsehood, you're bringing God into it. Okay, so that's the classical context for this. Culturally and historically, and this may open up another Pandora's box or whatever, is it has been interpreted as make sure that unless you are in a sacred moment of either prayer or study, don't pronounce even the tetragrammaton. Don't try to
Right.
pronounce that. Don't people say, write G-D, and all that, which really does not have anything to do, nor is it validated in any way, shape, and form by the original text. Some people will say, well, this is part of the drawing a fence around the Torah, and to make sure that we don't inadvertently do something that God wouldn't want us to be doing. But again, so those are the two contextual comments about
very important.
This one thing,
right? I know it's in the Orthodoxy and Chabad and like that. They will use the name Hashem.
Hashem.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Again, not so they don't say any word that would imply the name of God other than
and they'll
the
also
name.
say in Hebrew, they'll also say Adoshem,
right,
rather than Adonai. They'll also say Elokeinu or Elokim,
yes,
and make the distinction. But traditionally, meaning going back more than 500-600 years, there's no justification for that.
And then there's the little phrase, God made me do it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's just as bad.
Yeah, I heard it from God. Yeah.
That's right. Because now you're assuming it's a big assumption that one is making. Was it their own thought, or did God put that there? And it's another issue that we could spend hours on. In that discussion. Ricky, I think is Ricky. I know you want to say, but Ricky, Suzanne has had her hand up for a much longer time. Okay, and then Ricky, and then Rabbi Murray.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I was taught that this does not mean swearing. That it refers to something, well, like Elijah when he had that altar and he was and he called down fire from heaven. Well, he was told by God to do that. But if anyone else had just done that on a bet, let's say, and was not under God's instructions, then that would be calling on him in vain, just, to win a bet or prove a point. It would not bring glory to God.
Okay.
And just as a side note, I was listening to my favorite Bible teacher the other night, and he commented that as far as he knew, he has never ever heard from any other religion like Buddhism or Hinduism or any other religion regarding swearing. I mean, we hear God's name with swearing all the time, but you never hear like Buddha, darn it, or any other religion. And he always thought that was kind of interesting. So I've just
okay. Okay. Ricky?
Can I go back to a conversation we had so long ago that we were face to face, so it was pre-COVID, about the word swear. And I happened to have had the Constitution in my purse that day. And if you listen to anybody taking an oath, you say, so help me God, but it's, do you swear or affirm? Because many people don't want to swear on the name of God. So here, you shall not swear falsely by the name of the Lord your God. So I think that kind of comes out of this, that most of the legal docs say, do you swear or affirm? So that you can just affirm that you're going to do blah, 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 whatever. So just a point.
Okay.
And we had a whole big long, what was it? An oath? What was an oath versus a swear or something? Anyway, we beat it to death for an hour, I'm sure.
Yeah, I remember.
Remember?
I remember the little booklet you had with you.
Yeah, yep. I still have a couple of copies I keep around.
That's worthwhile.
I can suggest some people that you loan them to.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, everyone, because
only Section 1 of the 14th Amendment. That's what we need now.
Okay.
To summarize everything.
Okay. Rabbi Miri, you had your hand up.
I'll skip. That's okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. What about white lies?
They happen.
It's going to come up in another portion, but this is specific with using God's name.
Right. That's
Okay.
that's the distinction.
Later on, it's going to come up man to man and also man to himself. Okay. If you think about it, you can wind up lying to yourself. But if it's an interesting progression. Think about it when your mom or dad said, "Don't lie to me." Okay. That could be extended into all of what we're going to read next week. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, this doesn't say don't lie.
That's right.
We don't encounter don't lie until the holiness code in the middle of Leviticus.
That's right.
And that's actually it's even a different word, it's a different verb, different phrasing than here of lifting up God's name, or don't take an oath by God's name.
Right. So any further discussion on that? Well, there are some other commentaries on it.
Wendy has a
Oh, Wendy, sure, please.
I have a little theory about white lies. And it comes down to, it's not like if you're trying to protect yourself from something which you know is really a lie of something that you shouldn't be lying about. But for example, somebody comes home from the store and they show you an article of clothing they bought, and they say, "How do you think this looks?" And you look at them and go, "Well, can you bring it back? Do you keep it? What'd you buy it for?" They said, "No, I'm just trying to I can return this if it doesn't look good. Otherwise, give me the truth." So at that point, where you're not going to hurt somebody's feelings with it, and it's sort of like a little mitzvah. You say, "Return the dress. It doesn't look good at all." And then you've told the truth and they understand why. But if you can't change it, then you just say, "That looks nice." And that way you don't hurt their feelings. It's going to be there anyway, and they'll feel better about it. And that to me is a white lie that will save someone's feelings, not be the end all to people getting really, really crushed.
Good point.
Yeah, thanks.
That will come up when we get to that also in another day, another week or two. Yes, Gail.
I was just going to say a white lie is based on the circumstances that you're doing it. And I think that's probably the criteria you really need to discuss about a white lie. What are the circumstances? Yeah, it's not a black or white thing.
It's a good point. But anyway, Go ahead, Ricky.
Well, even a big lie. I mean, if in the 30s in Germany, if a guy came to the door and said, is Joe here? And you say no, but Joe's hiding in the closet, that's a lie. But it's a good lie.
Where is
he's there.
Where is it? It depends on your interpretation of the word here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you can.
He's there, but he's not here. Anyway, go ahead, Michael, and then Rabbi. Did you have your hand up too?
No.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Michael.
It can also come down to saving somebody from harm or saving somebody's life. I may give an example. A woman is at home, husband comes home drunk, and she starts to be beaten by her husband. She manages to get out of the house and go next door to try to save her life from further harm. And the husband next knocks on the door, and the owner of the home comes, "Is my wife here?" He says, "No."
Yes.
So what do you do with that? Is it a lie? But is it a lie that is proper? I would say use the word proper. So it comes down to common sense and being willing to save somebody from harm or life and death.
Okay. Kant discusses this in the categorical imperative. You should not lie. And he writes a huge book on the whole thing. But anyway, Rabbi Norman.
Many of the rabbis, especially the classical medieval commentators give, I think most of you know, give a hierarchy of the mitzvot. Okay, and as we've been saying, the reference here about telling the truth or not lying, it is of including God's name
Right.
in the statement. So what the scenario that Michael is describing, the higher mitzvah is do not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor.
Right.
Okay, so that yes, if you can save a neighbor, specifically in his scenario, a neighbor's, if you can save a neighbor's life, then absolutely that's a more important thing for you to do.
Okay. Oh, it's interesting that a lot of our discussion we tend, I'll recognize you in a second, Suzanne. A lot of our discussion has been to talk about how God spoke this. We sort of changed things, but I just wanted to point out that in the Targum Yonatan, he expands on the commandment by saying that these words came forth like storms, lightning, and flames, to draw a different picture than what we have been drawing. And that stood the test of time. A lot of people understood it, that this was to be followed to the letter. It was a commandment, not just a spoken word. Okay, not a in a soft tone of voice. So and that comes what to his interpretation is that 200 to between 200 and 700 common era, or when does that come into play, or is it 200 before the common era?
No, it's not
It's
before.
after.
It's not.
I
not
thought it was
before.
after.
Yeah, it's common era, right?
Yes, common era. So I just wanted to mention,
And he's Yonatan was also one of the scriptwriters, the screenwriters for Cecil B. DeMille's Ten Commandments. Also,
yes,
right.
yes, very good. Okay, Suzanne, you had your hand up, and I think you're going to have the last word. And then if we have any announcements, okay, go ahead.
Okay. Well, Rahab, the Bible gives us the example of Rahab doing something similar to what Michael had said. And now you guys would not really know this, but Rahab was also honored in the New Testament. I forget which book it was.
Right.
So apparently God did not have a problem with it. The problem that God has is if you tell a lie against a neighbor, or well, it doesn't have to be neighbor. I mean, it could be a work colleague or somebody that you know. If you're in a court situation, just for an example, and the person that you know was accused of stealing something, and you know darn well that that person did not, because you saw some other guy down the street steal the item, yet you're in court saying, oh yeah, he's a thief, I saw him do it. Well, now that is bearing false witness, and that lie hurts that person. I mean, that he could end up in prison, or, well, if it was a murder case, I mean, he could be put to death. So I think that's where God draws the line, that if your words bring harm to the individual and you're lying about it, then you're in trouble. But if you're stretching the truth a little bit, or maybe not quite giving the whole story, or whatever, to save a life, well, that's an entirely different matter.
Okay. Now, I'm going to address this to the rabbis, because this is on Yom Kippur, how things are broken down by prayers in different stages reflect our discussion that it almost follows the same overall delineation in Torah that we're of the 10 Commandments between man and God, man and man community to God and so forth as it comes up as we go through the Yom Kippur prayers. So would you want to just say a few words about that?
I'm not sure what more there is to say, other than to agree that there are distinctions between transgressions that we acknowledge and for which we ask forgiveness of those bein adam l'chavero, between one human being and another, which also has subcategories, within our family, etc., within our workplace, et cetera, and then distinctions of transgressions against God. But we all know that we're not allowed to ask forgiveness from God until we have asked forgiveness from our fellow human being.
Okay.
I think that's what you were alluding to.
Yes, I was headed in that direction because that's another practical way of seeing how it's applied to the various rituals, the holidays that we celebrate.
As we will see when we get there in Leviticus, especially, that when the high priest on Yom Kippur goes into the Holy of Holies to plead on behalf of the people, he pleads for himself and his family first, then for the whole people second, and then he pleads forgiveness from God. Right.
So there's a whole series of similarities, and that's why based on what we've been reading. So I just wanted to mention all that. Any other comments? Well, any announcements? Yes, Ricky, please.
In Ruth Ann's absence, this Wednesday, 10 o'clock, face-to-face in the synagogue, is a book club. And this week, let's see, what did we read? The Four Winds. But even if you haven't read the book, you're invited to come get involved in the conversation and find out what we're reading next month. So it's monthly, the first Wednesday of the month. No Torah study, no. That's the only thing I know about.
The sisterhood is
Gail has her hand up.
The sisterhood is doing the Friday night service.
Yes.
I'm going to be out of town. That's why
Yes.
Thank you.
Don't forget.
So that's right, and the husbands will be there too.
And then I also would say that on the normally would be the second Monday morning, the monthly Parshat HaShavua group will not be meeting in July. We'll pick up again in August because I'm going to be out of town, and they set my schedule, and the times don't work. And also I wish everyone well. Hope to see some of you at the bagel breakfast tomorrow morning. I think we have a birthday to celebrate at the bagel breakfast tomorrow, right?
And there's a big cake in the refrigerator.
Yeah. That's okay. And then the next, I actually won't be able to be with you for the next 3 Shabbatot because of travel and teaching in New York, as well as in Michigan at 2 different congregations on 2 different Shabbat mornings. So, and the times just don't quite coincide between Eastern and Mountain Time. So I wish everyone a good Chodesh Tov, a good month.
Very good, and safe travels, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, and see you next week.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you.
Take care.
Shabbat shalom.
Be well.
Shabbat shalom.